Sort of a post-hijacking after party we're having here.
Yeah.
Not sorry, by the way. Not sorry. Game on, sports fitness and health fans, for another episode of the Sporting Good Posture Podcast. Gear up for Coach Margella's advice from the sidelines as he helps you crush your game, no matter what health or fitness game you play.
Hey, I'm Coach Margella. I'm sporting good posture. What are you sporting?
The coach's door is always open. Let's join him now. Hey, Coach, what do you got for us today?
Welcome back to another episode of Sporting Good Posture. This is Coach Margella, and I'm back here in the new year after my podcast was hijacked by my producer, Frank Sardella.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully by now you've heard the last episode and got a lot out of what he said. And I wanted to do something today where I brought him on the show and we talked together here so that we can go over a little bit about our plans for the new year and just a little bit about Frank. I've known him for about 7 or 8 years now, and he's helped me with my practice as far as the podcast, articles that we do, emails that we send out in order to get more word out to the community about chiropractic and just health overall. And he's really been a good advocate for the practice, and he's helped me a lot. And he helps doctors all across the country do the same kind of things that I do. And I've been happy to work with him for this time, and I'm glad that he's been helping me along the way here to help you on your journey to better health. So I want to introduce Frank Sardella again today, my producer and my coach.
There you go.
The show.
And the coach's coach.
That's right.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a coach.
Yeah. So
even Tiger Woods and all the great athletes have a coach.
So sort of a post-hijacking after party we're having here.
Yeah.
Not sorry, by the way. Not sorry. Absolutely. Well, it was a pleasure. Thanks for that introduction. It was a pleasure to hijack your show. Truth be told, folks, Doc was supposed to have an episode done for this week. And when I didn't get it from him after a few days, I knew he got distracted on something. And I said, you know what? I'm just not going to, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to hijack the show, and I'm just going to rip out an episode, see what happens. And we ended up what we ended up with. So I guess this is the after party where we discuss what occurred and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, that was the weekend that I started doing the Chiro Thin, and I was doing my loading phase. And I definitely had a lot of fun loading up on eating whatever was in sight that weekend.
I can imagine. Plenty of Kenny Rogers roasters and some frozen yogurt as well.
That's right, and no broccoli.
Inside jokes, folks. These are the Seinfeld references that that Coach and I tend to share constantly.
Yeah,
constantly. In fact, how many references did we use just in the 15 minutes it took us to get on the air here and do this? Probably more than a dozen already.
Future,
at least
Family Guy.
At least a dozen references. All right, well, cool. Well, what do you want to grill me about now that you have me here? I suppose turnabout is fair play, and it's fair enough for you to grill me a little bit after I commandeered your show.
Well, one of the things that really stood out is the idea that weight gain is a symptom of something else. Yeah. And like you said, with the new year, everybody's always thinking about losing weight and everything, but that really is a symptom of a bigger issue that's going on in the body. So I wanted you to just hit on that again, because that really was one of the biggest things I took away from that episode.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this really was from personal experience with me. I mean, not just personal experience with chiropractic, but just personal experience of having gone down that roller coaster, not even on the subject of weight loss with me. It was more functionality, getting on medications, and, taking the wrong approach being not really understanding structure and function of the body, so not really understanding purely what the malfunction is. And a lot of false labeling goes on, and then you take a medication and it helps one thing, but it causes other problems, and then you have to have meds and handlings for those things. So there's a liability to not understanding the structure and function of the body, and particularly the structure. Everybody leaves that out. Everybody's like all about function, and they're like, well, the body functions this way. However, they don't realize without the structure, it'd be just a kind of like Peter Griffin in Family Guy when he wished he had no bones. When the guy was about to punch him, I wish I had no bones, and then he was this lump of flesh on the bus floor, so the guy wouldn't hurt him when he punched him. But in all seriousness, if you think about it, if you just took all the organs and body systems, I think I compared this to a computer server maybe in that episode where like, you know, the structure of the thing, people don't realize the fact that it's braced, all these parts are braced in a certain position to be able to interact with one another. Just trying to communicate with someone, you have to have them at a certain distance apart. You have to string a line between them. It's the same thing with computer circuitry or electricity or anything else, and the body is no different. And that basic structure is structured to foster the ideal function of the body. And once you understand those two things, you know what structure is supposed to be, and you know what function is supposed to be, then you really understand. When it comes to gaining weight, you know, there's a misunderstanding right there of I think the biggest thing in weight loss, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the whole premise of weight loss or whatever, trying to lose weight, really should be based on the fact of why does the body put on weight? What is the weight it's putting on? And what is the body attempting to do, and what's going wrong with it? Right? Obviously, you know, it doesn't seem to be a normal thing, although, you know, you can label it all you want, you can identify with it all you want, but excess weight in terms of fat is not a natural, normal thing to be in excess. Like if it's hanging around and it's not getting burned, something's wrong with basic function. Because so that whole premise is really predicated on the fact that the body manufactures fat cells to have future energy that it can use. And what tends to go wrong with people is, actually most people these days, is that the body will go ahead and manufacture it, it'll store it, it'll do all that up to that point, and then it doesn't do the third thing, which is burn it. And there are reasons for that. And that's what most people overlook. And structure is the number one thing that will go wrong. Although, obviously, your food intake, I don't want to imply that it's structure only and that your chiropractor, like Dr. Frank here, is going to like solve all your weight loss problems. If you're eating Malamars and getting adjusted, you might have problems losing weight still. I had to bring up Malamars.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a good point. That was another thing I took away, was the fact that the fat that you're storing is potential energy, and you reach a point where your body is malfunctioning, where it's not using that because you're not meant to carry that much extra fat and that much extra weight. And it goes along with the structure, and, you know, it does relate to posture. And one of the episodes we did just towards the end of 2020 was about the vagus nerve and how poor posture affects the vagus nerve and all the aspects that the vagus nerve travels down through the body, and it does affect your digestion and does affect your metabolism. And anyone that comes in that I find that has a weight gain issue usually has that problem too, where they're having poor posture along with it.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are things I didn't mention in the episode. And, you know, just if you look anatomically, like what comes to mind is like, I was just thinking about sugar intake and stuff like that. Maybe you don't binge on Malamars and ice cream. Maybe you eat pretty normal and you have carbs in your life, and those carbs turn into sugar that the body uses. But let's say there's something wrong with your structure and it's blocking the vagus nerve or several other nerve pathways that are going maybe to your pancreas or somewhere that's trying to regulate blood sugar and the use of the sugar for energy as well, because there are two types of energies the body can burn on. It's kind of like having an alternative fuel, right? Like there's sugar fuel, there's fat fuel. And you know, one of the problems is the body will choose sugar over fat, but even if you're not eating a lot of it, if you're having malfunctions where the body can't process certain things in certain ways, or maybe regulate the blood sugar or regulate the use of these things or the absorption or the metabolism of them, there's going to be a problem. And then on top of that, this is what I'm kind of thinking that I probably didn't say in that episode. Everybody wants a one and done. They're like, I think part of the problem is that it's weight loss itself isn't a one and done. This is why I did mention something about specialty in a recent episode I recorded. I don't remember if it was yours or if it was one of my episodes on my show, where I talked about when you go see a specialist. You know, I was going to lung specialists 26 years ago, and none of them could find out what was wrong with me. Yet they were still putting me on medications and all this stuff. So it was like the wrong investigatory procedure, then the wrong diagnosis, then the wrong medication, and so on, which led to more medications and whatever. part of the problem when you go to a specialist, when you super specialize, is you're zeroing in on something that might itself not be malfunctioning. And the body is a harmony of function. The body is like all the organs and body systems work together. That's also why structure is structured the way it is, because it has to hold everything in place. It's kind of like a musical instrument. All the valves on a musical instrument, right, and all the little air passages and all that kind of stuff are positioned in a very specific pattern and way to get certain pitches and sounds to come out of it. And if you don't space them in that way, the whole thing doesn't work. There's a harmony there. And it's the same thing with how the body works. But when you super specialize with a specialist and you're not going holistically, meaning the whole body, you're not considering other things that influence, and you're isolating, and you might be causing problems in other departments, if you will. And it's the same thing. I think people take that one and done specialty approach to weight loss. First mistake is looking at weight as a singular issue, when weight is a symptom of maybe many things that are going on in the body, right? There might be, I don't know, like all different kinds of things that can cause weight gain, from what you're eating to maybe you're eating healthy foods, but the soil was so depleted that those healthy foods were grown in that they don't have certain minerals and vitamins that you need to be getting out of them, and you don't even know. There might be mold in your house that's influencing that you don't even know about. There are so many factors involved, and so chiropractic isn't a one and done, and neither is a weight loss program a one and done. I think the whole point here is, and I brought this up because you just added ChiroThin. It was like now you have the trifecta. You started out with chiropractic, then you started doing lipolaser back in 2013 or whenever that was, and you got some rapid, fat loss, and you started giving people some nutrients and different things like that, and you were doing chiropractic, so we were attacking it from two angles, but then you added that third level, which is like, all right, the third level is like, what the heck is going on in the body in the first place, and how does all this come together? I don't know. That's kind of my take on it.
That's
take it at face value.
Exactly
I guess
what it was is the lipolaser that we added in is a great tool to help people immediately get into fat burning mode, and it helps tons of people do that. But without examining the other parts of the body, without examining things that may be going wrong, then you may be missing part of it. So that's one of the things. One of the reasons why I added the ChiroThin for this past, this year coming up, is that's going to solve some of those problems for the people that are also very toxic, or even with the lipolaser, they may only get minimal fat loss. There's an even bigger underlying issue. So the cool thing about that, now that we're talking about the ChiroThin, a couple weeks into the new year, I'm already having some people with some tremendous results on that as far as weight loss. But on top of the weight loss, I have a couple of people already looking to get off some blood pressure medications and diabetes medications. It's pretty amazing. So I'm hoping that those things pan out into next month and into the spring, where these people are able to actually fix the underlying causes of their dysfunction and get off some of these medications they've been taking for 20, 30 years now.
Yeah. And that's where I started from. It's this year, it's 26 years ago that I was able to toss all my medications into the wastebasket. Not to imply that you should quit your medications, folks, or any of that kind of stuff. What I'm saying is
there's a time and place for that. Yeah,
when you embrace the entire body and you find the actual reasons, you'll find some of the handlings that you had become obsolete. They're unnecessary.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, there's a pretty famous chiropractor that about 25, 26 years ago, I heard him speak live for the first time, and I was just astounded. This was after I got my life saved. He was telling the story about one of his clients had a patient come in for back pain, and the person was terminal, like end-stage diabetes, something like that. Person was terminal. He treated him. The guy came in for back pain. He actually was visiting the guy's city. I think it was like Portland, Oregon or something. The guy was from completely the other side of the country and decided he was going to live out his days in the Pacific Northwest or something, but couldn't live with this back pain he was having. He couldn't sleep in a hotel room. Goes to this doctor. The doctor treats him. He had never been to a chiropractor before. Chiropractor treats him. The next day, the guy wakes up in the hospital, and very curious conversation with the doctor. The doctor came in and said, when paramedics found you, you had a needle in your arm. It was an insulin injection. And the doctor's question to him was, why the hell were you injecting insulin into yourself? Were you trying to commit suicide? And he said, what do you mean? I'm end-stage diabetic or whatever the type is. I don't know the lingo on that. And they said, no, you're not. And they had his blood test results there, and he was no longer diabetic.
Wow.
So his malfunction was purely structural. This guy was on his way out, had already bought his ticket out. Now, this is not everybody. I feel like for you, Doc, I don't want to commandeer your show and give the idea that, all diabetics are going to get off medication. That's just one case, one function. And I have 100 stories like that I've heard in chiropractic over the last 25 years, as I'm sure you have, Doc. But it's just an interesting story that structurally just medically, there was nothing that could be done for this guy. They said, check out, go live out your last days, and blah, blah, blah was the best advice they could give him. They gave him insulin to sustain him, to do what his body wasn't doing. And there was one piece of function that was never looked at. And even the chiropractor didn't really look specifically at that. He just adjusted what was in front of him and put it back to its optimum state, which I actually want to inject here, the fact that I don't think any of us have mentioned this. Frank, I don't know if you mentioned this in any of your episodes on your show, but chiropractic is based on the optimum body. All you're doing when you treat, that 10% of what you do when you treat, is you're putting the body back to its optimum. It's like when your kids take all their toys out and they're all over the floor, and you have them put them back in their place on the shelf and in the toy box, right? That's the optimum. The optimum is not Legos all over the floor and toys all over the floor. The optimum is everything in its optimum position and put away in its place. Maybe not the best analogy, but it's the same thing as what we were talking about. What a chiropractor is doing is he's just structurally, he's not even removing the interferences. They just go away as a side effect as well by putting the spine into the correct position where it's supposed to be. And it's even the same thing when you do orthotics, and you put an orthotic device when somebody's arch has collapsed, you're doing that. You were going to say something, Coach. I cut you off.
Well, the orthotics first, since we're talking about that, there's an immediate change. When I test people with and without the orthotics on, there's an immediate change in structure and function. Yeah. And it's very apparent to people, to the point where they're almost floored at the response they get on these tests. But going back to what you said, last year we did the episode about the 125th anniversary of chiropractic. Yeah. And the first adjustment was actually on a guy named Harvey Lillard, who was a janitor at the chiropractic school in Iowa that I went to. And when he got an adjustment, it restored his hearing. Yeah. And that was one of the biggest stories ever from chiropractic, which kind of got it off the ground and on the map.
And this is also logical, but not correct. But a lot of people would look at that and draw that as a conclusion and then promote that as a conclusion. Not even a chiropractor. Somebody might say, wow, chiropractic cures diabetes. Chiropractic doesn't cure anything. The optimum structure and function of the body, when fostered, when helped, when actually made to do the things it's supposed to do and be in the position it's supposed to be in, allows the body to do what it's supposed to do in the first place. But things can still go wrong. Somebody could get stabbed in the pancreas and have a bad pancreas from a stab wound. No matter how many adjustments you give them, it's not going to fix that puncture or whatever. This is probably a bad example, but think about anything that you injure. You cut off a guy's leg, well, he's going to be off balance for the rest of his life. Even with an orthotic, that orthotic is going to be artificial, and there's going to be a new balance that has to be developed there or something like that. So I just think that, things are being overstated. I brought this up in the hijacking episode with the fact that, people, I think, that are making claims or over-claiming, even some chiropractors are over-claiming, not intentionally or not with any malice. They're just not really saying it right. What they really mean when they're talking about adjustments boost immunity or something like that. No, it doesn't really boost your immunity. It just gives your body a fighting chance to do what it's supposed to do. And the more things that you do to support the actual function that it's supposed to do, your immune system's supposed to do, and whatever, and even your metabolism, like even how you manufacture and store fat cells and then use them as energy. All those things are influenced by structure and function. And of course, that third thing of the stresses from the environment and actual things that are in the environment that get taken to the body, either voluntarily or involuntarily. Involuntarily would be any like stresses that belong out there that you start wearing. But voluntarily would be like things you're voluntarily, like, well, when you pig out at Christmas time and you're eating cannolis, as we Italians do, or loading up on, pumpkin pie and, all that stuff. That's also a stress on the body because it's something that doesn't necessarily belong in the body either. So you've got all these factors to consider, and there's no blanket statement, good or bad, that could be made either way, saying, well, all hope is lost, and just label it and say, you have a weight problem. That doesn't help us do anything. But neither does chiropractic adjustments make you lose weight. That doesn't help us either.
Yeah, that's a great point. And really, what chiropractors do, we're just here to remove the interference. And then your body's designed to do what it's supposed to do after that without the interference. And that's when it works better. So everybody has a different level of interference. It kind of reminds me of that episode on Seinfeld where Kramer adopted the highway and he decided to make the highway from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, thinking that, wider lanes would be more comfort,
luxurious
driving ability on the highway. But meanwhile, by going from 4 lanes to 3, it clogged up the highway and there was traffic jams and it made it worse. So somebody had to go in there and repaint the lines and make that highway 4 lanes again because the 3 lanes didn't work. And the highway was all jammed up. So it's like your body. You have to remove those cones. You have to make those lanes wider to make your body work better. So that's the best way I can kind of relate it to that.
That's a great analogy just on the fact that it was a Seinfeld reference. So, and, I should say here that both of us, like Coach in hosting the show and me in producing it, we are constantly challenging each other to work certain references in. I've gone as far as before I did I do a lot of lectures, corporate lectures, and I recall even telling Coach Margella before one of my talks that I was going to work in a Back to the Future reference into my talk today or whatever it was. So, and he does the same, right? I believe you've done it in a few of your talks as well now. So either a Seinfeld reference or a Back to the Future reference. So you should see our text messages back and forth daily. Our text threads are full of stuff, and this is the fun stuff, folks. And hey, look, that brings up an interesting point too. I mean, there's another aspect and another factor of like the environment you surround yourself with, right? So we're talking about ChiroThin, we're talking about chiropractic care, and we're talking about lipolaser. Those 3 aspects of weight loss. At least 2 of those 3 include for stress in the environment, and stress actually can influence weight gain and things like that. And one of the biggest stressors in the environment would be like what you're surrounding yourself with. I didn't get into this a lot in my episode, if you can call it that, even though I stole it. But the fact of the matter is that there's an environment out there that's very stressful, and how you choose to fill that environment, not just people, toxic people, everybody talks about toxic people or things like that, or people who are good for you. But beyond that, like, Frank and I are constantly telling jokes to each other over text rather than turning on news for 20 minutes, right? And we have lower amounts of stress as a result of that. I last night I got my wife into Third Rock from the Sun. I got to tell you, the most John Lithgow, most hilarious series on television, I think, ever. We were laughing hysterically every single episode last night, and it just felt so good to laugh hysterically. And you can feel how healthy it is compared to when you have a complainer sitting there next to you. It doesn't even have to be pandemic or politics or whatever, but if you've ever had somebody in your environment who's a complainer, that person can partially, to some minuscule degree, be making you fat. Because it's part of your stressful environment. So there is a combination of things and stresses of the environment. I always I do this for Coach because he's an athlete, but I'm always referencing professional athletes, particularly NFL, American football, because of the fact that, look, if you don't believe the human body is designed to take on a tremendous amount of stress, then turn on the TV on any given Sunday. During football season and watch what these athletes do week in and week out and day out at practice, what they do to their bodies, and then all year round to keep those bodies in shape, the rigorous things they put them through. And here we are complaining about, oh man, God, that mattress I'm sleeping on hurt my back last night. We can't even get through the night. And these guys are going out there making flying leaps and doing impossible stuff, making impossible catches, and it kind of makes you second guess. But the human body is designed to take on that level of stress. So compare yourself to one of those football players. Okay, you didn't build muscles, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, but it's not all of that. The human body is designed to take on a tremendous amount of stress. So why can the news media or a negative friend who's around you affect you, or worrying about your finances, or worrying about your children or something like that? Why can that get in and affect you? Well, there are other reasons. It's not just, you got to de-stress. Well, there also might be a blockage. Look at this guy that was an end-stage diabetic, was ready to die, and almost killed himself injecting himself with insulin after he got adjusted. So it's kind of a multifaceted approach, and that's just my goal. That's why I hijacked your show. That's why I do what I do. That's why I do my which hopefully you'll let me shamelessly plug my podcast again. Before we're done here, but anyway, I forget where I was going with that.
Well, that brings me to a good point. Chiropractic was founded on principles just like that, and they're actually one of the principles was that said that interference is created by thoughts, traumas, and toxins. The 3 T's are what creates interference in the body and malfunction.
Wow, that's good. I never even heard that.
Yeah, that's something from D.D. Palmer and B.J. Palmer, who founded chiropractic. And you think about it, just exactly what you just said, thoughts. You're around negative people. You're watching news. And really the news stands for nothing ever worth seeing, because we all know that it's designed to make you upset and it's designed to sell commercials. That's not what you should be watching. And then traumas, it could be anything. It could be sports injuries. It could be car accidents. It could just be you sitting in the wrong position every day at work, to sleeping on a mattress that's not right for you. And then toxins, obviously, in our environment, whether it's, smog or smoke or just toxins in foods or whatever that you come in contact with, all of those things are going to create interference with the body and cause malfunction. So there's many factors of, again, why your body malfunctions. And then also going back into the weight gain thing, there's many reasons why people gain weight. And there's many reasons why somebody might be able to lose weight easier than somebody else.
And it's funny. It's just I was just having this realization now. There's like a mindset shift that needs to occur. Is just kind of a flip flop of the way you think of things. And what I just thought of is the fact that, take this guy who got his hearing back. Don't think of it as chiropractic healing his hearing. Think of it as the fact of an obstructed nerve was blocking his hearing. Right? So you can't say chiropractic cured deafness. That was only one form of deafness. You can go deaf by stabbing a hot poker into someone's ear and puncturing their eardrum. You can make them deaf.
Listen to Metallica and
right?
Rocky too much.
Yeah, that's true. There's more stuff that we talk about. All of Coach Margella's isms, Rocky Balboa being one, but listening to Metallica and Disturbed and all those bands. Yeah, that's going to get to you after a while. And I'm a rock drummer, actually. So Yeah. So, and I have been for the last a lot longer than 25 years. So, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that there are too many labels out there that label something that make it look like it's a thing and it only has one cause. But if you just stop with these labels and say, okay, maybe deafness itself is not one subject. You have obstruction to the blah, blah, blah nerve. And one of the symptoms, right? One of the symptoms of that obstruction is hearing loss, right? But people flip-flop it around and go, all right, hearing loss is the condition, it is the label. And it's dangerous to do that because you limit yourself and you're not really looking for the cause. So same thing with the guy with the diabetes. It's like maybe he wasn't the label type 2 diabetic. He had an obstruction to the nerve, which then made the pancreas do its thing to remove insulin from or whatever it was. And by the way, insulin, just as a side note, is a fat manufacturing hormone. I think there's six of those hormones in the body. One of them is insulin. Yeah. So if you're triggering insulin, you're asking for it. That in the first place. But here's this guy who was dying from it, and he didn't really have diabetes. He had an obstruction causing a diabetic situation. It's all in how you think of it, and you really have to retrain your mind on how you look at it. It's more of a self-awareness thing, but it's also just an awareness of cause and effect. I think that's more that, and that's probably the most important thing in weight loss.
That's exactly what the message is we're trying to convey is you have to look at the whole picture, and you need to have a mindset of more proactive rather than reactive. Mm-hmm. And it's about prevention and not the cure. It's really about staying healthy, not trying to get healthy after your health has failed you. It's much easier to keep your health than try to regain it once it's lost.
Right. And
one of the hardest things to do.
And both sides don't have an outlook where you're like, oh, well, everything I've been told up to now is BS, because it's not necessarily. But right. It's just like flip-flop how you're looking at it, but don't go to the other extreme either and say, well, this is the cure for everything, because that's not either. And that was I think I brought up the Whole Foods example. I saw that headline. Did you hear about
about this better diet will make you immune to everything? And
and he took a lot of crap from that in the media. And according to what I read, I really don't know, to be honest, but I saw this one headline. I'm like, oh boy, here it goes. But I instantly knew, because you and I, we do this for a living. I've been doing this the last 26 years now, and I'm going, I know exactly what he said and what he meant. No matter how he was quoted, no matter what kind of crap he took for it, I know exactly what he was implying. But he was, in the media's defense, he was overstating his position, right? It's not really the way he was saying it. There was something to what he was saying. What he's saying is like, look, if you give the body what it needs, if you understand structure and function, and you understand what fuels the body runs on, you're not putting diesel into a regular unleaded car, right? And you understand, and you give it what it needs, and you maintain it. You don't let it break down. You don't let stuff wear out. You do what you got to do. If you do that, you will have a better shot at being immune to certain things in the environment than someone else who's not. And that's why when you have, like, it doesn't matter what pandemic virus it is, someone who's elderly is a lot more likely to have health issues. It doesn't mean they should. It's just that because of this stinking thinking that everybody's got in terms of like thinking of conditions as just one thing and an identity or a label or whatever, and then taking medications and so on is the only solution. And there's nothing to understanding structure and function. They've spent many years setting themselves up for that. And as the body gets old and starts to deteriorate, will deteriorate more. But even aging process, correct me if I'm wrong, Doc, even the aging process can be a lot more severe on one person over another, depending on how you're understanding, how self-aware you are, how much you understand about structure and function, and how you take care of that structure and function. You can age worse than someone else. You could be
definitely
right.
I mean, it's funny. Like, I'm going to be 40 here on January 26th,
Ouch.
And I went to my 20-year high school reunion last year, or 2 years ago. And you look back at some of the people, and some people look really good, and they're almost 40, and some people look way older than they actually are.
No, it's
so true. A lot of things have factors in that. And a lot of it has to do with your lifestyle choices and how you age.
Yeah.
And a lot of that can be, slowed down, because if you're doing the right things towards your body, you can slow it down more than others.
I think the most recent good example of somebody aging well was Doc's a huge fan of Cobra Kai, and I just saw season 3 as well. He got me into it, admittedly. Which is actually, for anyone who doesn't watch the show, it's on Netflix now. It started out on YouTube. It is Ralph Macchio, the original Karate Kid, actually created a story that was a series of all these him and Johnny, the two rivals, being now in my age group now, and what their lives turned out to be, and all the backstories that you didn't see in the movie and all that kind of stuff. It's very creative. But in season 3, spoiler alert, they had Elizabeth Shue, who was from the original Karate Kid, the blonde girl. I forgot her name, Allie, her character name. And I remember commenting to Coach after I told him the first thing I said is, wow, Elizabeth Shue looks amazing. Now, she's in my age group. And when I say she looks amazing for her age, she also doesn't look like she had work done or anything. Like, she looks naturally amazing. Yeah, like she just didn't age. And I guarantee you, she's doing something more so than somebody. And I went to my 30-year reunion, I don't know, a couple Thanksgivings ago now. And some of the people that I saw there, I could not believe like how old they looked. Much older or whatever. But here's another example, though, and this is more on the positive side. I don't know if you noticed this, Frank. I noticed that my generation at my age looks a lot younger than my parents' generation did at that same age. They looked a lot older. And then my grandparents' generation, forget it. When they were my age, they looked like senior citizens.
Yeah. If you look back to the old movies, like old Westerns and stuff, they all looked very aged and they weren't at that point.
Exactly. So there are differences, and whatever. But if you look at sort of, the advance of humanity into understanding more about the environment, more about the body, more about this, that, and the other thing, it's not just technology or food preservatives, if some people will have you believe that is, I think all food preservatives do is make your body decay slower after you're gone. I don't think they're food preservatives, if anything, are shortening your life, not lengthening your life. So it doesn't really have much to do with that. I think it has to do with our having a better understanding of how we take care of ourselves and different things like that. And, things like vaccines and like diet pills and diet surgery, or whatever you call it, diet surgery, I don't know, liposurgeries and, plastic surgery and all that kind of stuff. Those things are basically, they're not even shortcuts. They're just kind of a little bit of an ignorant understanding on the part of the developers of those technologies, quote, if you can call them that, for a quick fix to a problem. And that tends to be, medication isn't wrong either. Medication has a certain use, but only for an emergency intervention. Medications, let's not forget, are poisons, and they have a lot of effects on the body. It doesn't matter what the medication is for. It's still something that's not natural to the body. It's not something. The best example we give is like if somebody has a headache, do they have an aspirin or an Advil deficiency? Right? They don't. Right? There's just what that poison is it's when taken in this dose. What it tends to do is, one of the things that it does is it numbs, I don't know, certain nerve channels or something, so you don't feel the pain. But the reason the headache's there is still there, right? So it's like makes you ignorant of the headache. I think the best example for me was the first time I had my wisdom teeth pulled. They did them in 2 different surgeries. The first wisdom teeth pulling that I went through, they gave me this pain medication. I think it was the first time I was on it. It was like Valium or something like. And so I took this stuff, and I remember telling my girlfriend at the time, I told her, I said, this is weird, okay? The pain is still there. I can actually feel it, but I no longer care about it. Like, it was the weirdest phenomenon. No, but I'm telling you, this is what I think it was Valium. This is what Valium did. Valium actually made me sort of disconnect from experiencing the pain, but I could still tell it was there. I could still feel it, but I no longer cared about it or was being affected by it in some uncertain terms. So when you have pain from a tooth being pulled out, there's a nerve that's irritated. There's different factors involved in that, and it's not a deficiency of Valium. It's not a deficiency of Advil or aspirin or whatever. So I may be getting way off point here, but I just think that it's important to really look at things and how twisted the view becomes because of all these shortcuts. And I think the point I was making about medication is all medications are poison and related. Poison is just something that doesn't belong inside, right? That's a poison to any species. Something that doesn't belong in their system getting into their system that has some sort of adverse effect is by definition a poison. Medications are poison. Now, some poisons have been found to have certain effects that can help in an emergency intervention situation. Yeah. Even antibiotics, right? Your body is supposed to fight off infection, but when you have a major surgery is not natural in nature to the body. That's man-made. So when you go in with a steam shovel and dig something out, you're going to have a little more hefty of an intervention, and absolutely, antibiotics are needed. But at the same time, living on antibiotics is a whole different thing because you're killing off a lot of stuff that you need to have in there at the same time. This is why they tell you to...
Most people that overdo the antibiotics become resistant to it, and then they have a tough time with their immune system as they get older.
Yeah.
And what you were saying about medications brings me up to a good point. I was just discussing this with somebody the other day, and anybody that's been on medications for any period of time knows that you go into the doctor every 6 months or every year and do blood work. And the reason that you do the blood work is because they're checking your kidneys and your liver to see if that medication is literally killing you.
Right. Because that's
exactly what it's for.
Yeah, that's one of the things that poisons do, and that was my point. My point was,
so
a poison,
basically we're just kind of doing it slowly by taking the medications. If you're, and if you think about it, like I always ask this to somebody, who's your wellness doctor? Who's somebody that you go to where you're not just taking pills and creams and lotions and potions? Like, who are you going to for general health advice besides just filling a prescription?
Right.
And again, that's what I try to be for my patients on the podcast and in my office, is a wellness advocate. And I want to help you. And there's times, like we said, for emergency, you need to get some medication for whatever. But when you're on these medications 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it's not a shortage of the medication that's the problem. There's obviously something underlying that we haven't really addressed yet. Right. And the medication still isn't fixing it.
Right. And don't get us wrong either. I mean, an organ can legitimately be damaged beyond repair. Mm-hmm. But one of the points I brought up in the last episode was the fact that the human body has an amazing power to regenerate. But again, you need to restore structure and function. You have to remove interference to that process and let the body do what it can. And then in the shape that it's in, it will do the best that it can. But that best is far beyond what most people think. And that's what's really incredible, is most people, the way things are done now has given people this impossible view of the future. And I think people would be doing much more. I think there'd be a lot more athletes, actually, if people really realize the power of the human body.
I totally agree.
Just athletes alone.
So last thing before we wrap it up, what's the final take that you want people to take away from this episode today?
Self-awareness, structure, and function are the three paramount important things when it comes to weight loss, immunity, pain, malfunction, even some diseases as well, and that things aren't as they appear. You really have to just look logically start with the blueprint, know how things are supposed to be mechanically functioning, but before that, what structure should support that? It's not just your spine, it's your entire skeleton, but also the muscles and all the body systems. How do they plug in? How do they work together? You do not need a PhD. You do not need a doctorate degree to understand that. And you will be a lot better for it if you do, because even though you still need to go to the doctor, you and the doctor now become a team. And you're empowering your doctor to be able to help you way more, because there's one thing that Doc Margella cannot do is crawl inside your body and experience what you're experiencing. He can't. No doctor can. No matter how good they are, I don't care what 5-star surgeon they are or what have you. Yeah, they can cut you open and find out, but they had to cut you open to do it. You don't have to cut yourself open to know some of these things. And so that makes you an active participant. And I think that's probably what the takeaway is. The rest of it is in my Hijack episode.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. That really was a great episode. I got a lot out of it. It reminded me of our mission and the message that we're trying to get across. And, you've done this a long time. You've done this twice as long as I have. And as far as getting the message out for chiropractic. So keep up the good work about doing what you're doing. And, just know that I appreciate it. And I know all the other doctors that work with you appreciate it. And I appreciate you coming on this podcast today and doing the interview with me. And I look forward to doing this again in the future here. And we have a lot of guests coming on this year and a lot of great information for 2021. So I'm really looking forward to this season. That's awesome. My pleasure to be here. And we definitely got a lot more episodes in the canister here ready to go. So, and you know what? I'm going to shamelessly plug my my podcast as well. Because there's a lot of valuable data on it. And my show is called The Wellness Broadcast. You can go to thewellnessbroadcast.com if you just purely want to see it on the website. But I'm on all the major platforms. Coach Margella is.
iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, any platform that hosts podcasts, pretty much on there, and at The Wellness Broadcast on Instagram. And you can DM me there if you want. I'm even on Facebook at The Wellness Broadcast as well. If you're more of a Facebook person, I guess it's a generational thing. I'm not on TikTok, though. I don't think I'll ever be on TikTok.
Me neither.
Yeah. I shouldn't say that, though. I feel like people are going to just turn me off now. They're like, oh, he's not on TikTok, said he'll never do it. Forget it. These Gen X guys, who the hell are they?
Well, and that reminds me, I'm going to give a plug, too. You mentioned about Cobra Kai, and there's a Facebook group that I helped start, and I'm an admin on for Cobra Kai. It's called Cobra Kai Never Dies. It's now got 18,000 people on that from all over the world.
Join at your own risk, too, because, I mean, there is some crazy stuff that gets posted on there, but especially from super fans, but even people that aren't super fans.
Or you just want to have some fun on there, Cobra Kai Never Dies on Facebook, 18,000 people and growing, and I enjoy going on there. I played a crease role in there, by the way, and Dan, my friend, that's the other admin, plays the Johnny role. So we kind of go back and forth with who really owns Cobra Kai and who's the real.
There's so many. It's so funny how many arguments among fans go on this thing. But you guys, if you want to clean up your news feed and not have bad news, definitely join that group. It's funny. I get so many of those posts, and they're hilarious. Some of the arguments are funny. And even some of the memes that are posts, I mean, like they don't even have anything to do with the show other than referencing and making a meme out of something in life about Cobra Kai and the Karate Kid and all that kind of stuff. So it makes you laugh, and that'll help with the stress as well.
Yeah, and honestly, for me, it's a distraction from regular life and work and everything, and it's just fun.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward. Season 4, they said will come out later this year, Cobra Kai, and Cobra Kai Season 3 just came out. I finished it in like 2 days, and I couldn't help myself. I was going to save some episodes, and I just got so into it, I had to blow through all of them.
Oh, that's awesome.
So get on Facebook, Cobra Kai Never Dies, if you haven't seen that yet. And I look forward to this season. This year, I really want you to reach out to me. Tell me what's going on, and I'll tell you what I think. DM me on Instagram at Sporting Good Posture. Contact me at Facebook at Ideal Health and Wellness Center. I want to help you out this year. I want to make 2021 an even better year for you. So remember, the coach's door is always open. This is Coach Margella. I'm Sporting Good Posture. How about you?
The Sporting Good Posture Podcast is a broadcast wellness production powered by Ideal Health Wellness Center. All content copyright 2020, all rights reserved. Executive producer, Frank Sardella. Dr. Margella appears courtesy of Ideal Health Wellness Center in Franklin. For more information, visit sportinggoodposture.com and follow Coach on Instagram at Sporting Good Posture. Let me just see what your levels look like.
Check.
I don't want to wait for my lunch to get colder.